Hey guys, welcome to my three-part tutorial series on how to create a boss AI that can fire abilities at you and path towards you, and also just creating a little bit of abilities. This is all based off of stuff that I created in my game Boss Fighters. If you guys want to check that out, the link will be in the description down below. Um, so the first episode I plan to focus on just creating the ability because I feel like, before you can, animate the boss and give it AI and have it path towards you, it needs to have some sort of tool to work with. So I'm going to be basing this off of the Fire Spirit boss because it is the first one that I made and it's sort of where I started all of this. And what I want to do is basically just recreate the napalm attack that it has, where it just shoots a line of fire in front of it and it'll stick around for 10 seconds. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a starter player script, and I'm going to create a local script, and I will just call it Fire Spirit Abilities. I name it this because, the Fire Spirit has 4 abilities, but, just for the sake of this video, I'll just create one, which will be the napalm ability. So first I want to define my variables. I think the first thing that I'm going to need is the user input service. So that's going to be local UIS equal to game get service user input service. So I'm going to use this just so that I can press certain buttons to activate the ability. So in the game, I think it's the button E will create the napalm. So, I might need more relevant objects down here, but I'll handle that later. So the first thing I want to do is just say UIS dot input began connect function, and it'll take in an input as a parameter, so it'll just check which button do you press. Let's say if input dot user input type is equal to, or no, not, it's a key code. Input dot key code is equal to enum dot keycode dot e. So all this line is saying is that activate ability when user presses the button E. So then when they activate that, what I want it to do is I want it to run the napalm function. So I'll just have it called napalm. So the next thing that you want to do is you just want to check, does the player have enough mana? Because if there's no sort of check on that, then someone will be able to spam the ability theoretically as much as they want. So let's just start by adding in a mana value on the player. So I like to set this as an integer value in the game space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a server-side script, and I'm going to call this the ability handler. So it's important to just have some sort of script that can take these, it can take calls from this script onto the server side, because you can't run these abilities client side or else no one else will see them. So first I want to do is define my variables, and I'm going to need the players is equal to game dot get service players. I'm going to just say players dot player added connect function, and I'm taking a player. So all we're going to do is we're just going to create a local mana, which is equal to instance.new, and it'll be an integer value. And then we're going to parent this mana, or we're going to put this mana in the player so that there's some way for us to access it. And then we'll set its name to mana, and then its value will be just 100. So, you know, your base mana is 100. And I'm not going to create the regeneration script. That's a different, that would be a different tutorial for a different time if you guys were interested. So now we have when a player joins the game, what should happen is, oh, that's weird. My base plate is not anchored for some reason. So what's going to happen is that I have a mana value, and it's 100. And then I'm not really sure what this is. Oh, that's a totally different thing. I would not worry about that. So let's just handle that. I'm going to put this in server storage. This is a different project. I wouldn't, don't worry about it for the sake of this tutorial. So we have a mana value. So all we want to do is define mana, which will be equal to game.players.localplayer.mana. Or actually, wait for child, mana. So the game will wait. Make sure you have it in your player first. So all it's going to do is just say if the mana dot value is greater than, and let's just say 30. That's about what it's supposed to be. So if the mana value is greater than 30, then we can run the napalm. Or honestly, even better, I would just put it here before you even call the function. So it'll only call the function if the mana value is the right value. So what we want to do next is we're going to create a remote event. So let's do that, and we're just going to call it fire ability. So all this is going to do is just let us communicate to the server that it's time to run the napalm ability. And then we will define that right here. Local fire ability remote event is equal to game.replicatedStorage.fireAbility. And then we'll just say fire ability remote event fire server, and I'm going to pass through the argument napalm, the string value. So I'm going to tell the server that this is coming from my player and it's going to be the attack napalm. The next thing it wants to do is it's going to want to change your mana value. Actually, let's just start with the fire ability. We're going to focus on this first. So go to the ability handler. I'll copy this remote event right here. And then just clean this up a little bit. It's always good practice to comment your code. Run when player joins the game. Probably throw that down here. So, actually I'll put it up here. So now what we're going to do is say when the fire ability remote event is called, we will run a function that will take in the parameter the player who calls the function and then the ability name. And all I'm going to do is just run a simple if statement. It just says if ability name is equal to napalm, then we will run the local function napalm. So all it'll do is it'll run the napalm, and then, you know, this is a way for the server to be able to handle this, not the player. So we don't have that client side issue. So let me just take a look at my notes for the server side of this. Alright, let's look up napalm. Alright, so in our napalm function, the first thing we want to do is we want to loop 15 times. So for I is equal to 1 to 15, do that. So the reason why it loops 15 times is because the napalm is going to come out in 15 fractions. You don't want the whole napalm to come out all at once. It's going to be in little intervals. So in between each napalm, there will be maybe a tenth of a second. So first thing we want to do is set fire part properties. So we'll have local fire part is equal to a new part. And then the fire part will have a transparency of 1, so it's going to be invisible. And then it'll be anchored. And we will have it have no collisions. And then this part is a bit adjustable, but the size I went for is just 20 by 4 by 6. So that's going to be the properties of the fire part. And then we're going to need the fire, which is just the built-in Roblox fire particle emitter. So just instance.new fire, and then the fire's parent will be the fire part, and then the fire size will be 30, so pretty big. And then we're going to have the sound properties. So we want the napalm to make a noise, because it'd be a bit weird if it was quiet. Sound, and then we'll put the fire noise dot parent will be equal to the fire part, same as the fire. Fire noise dot volume will be 2, and then fire noise dot volume will be equal to true. So we have the fire part, the fire, and the fire noise. Oh, and also the fire noise dot sound ID, and I have the sound ID that I use for my game, but you can, theoretically use any sound that you want. This is just like a flame noise. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to add a game service, and I forgot to put local here, so local debris service is equal to, or I'll just say debris is equal to game get service debris. So the debris service basically just lets you delete a part after a specified amount of time. So I'm going to say the debris will have, I'll add the fire part, and it'll last 5 seconds. So all I'm saying is that after 5 seconds, I want the fire part to be deleted from the game. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the fire part in the workspace. So just in the appropriate spot. So in the workspace, I'm going to create a folder, because I like to organize where things go. And I'm just going to call this the debris, or the ability debris. So what this does is I'm just going to say I want this to be in the workspace, but I want it to be under this folder so that I know where all debris are, all ability debris is. So the fire part will be workspace.ability debris. And then the fire part C-frame. And this part is a little bit tricky. But basically what I'm going to be using is two-world space. Which, if you don't know what two-world space is, it's a function that Roblox has that lets you define an axis, like a local axis, based off of a part's current C-frame. So, if I want a part like 2 studs in front of another part, then two-world space is perfect for that. The reason why this is necessary is that, depending on which way you're facing, it'll ensure that the block is always directly in front of you. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set some parameters in napalm. So it's going to take in the player, and it's going to take in the position. And the position I'm actually going to define right here. Well, I could just define it in the function. So I'll take this out, and I'll just say local position is equal to player dot primary part dot C-frame. So yeah, I know this isn't really a position, this is a C-frame, but basically it's just taking the player's primary part C-frame and it's setting it in a variable. So fire part C-frame will be equal to position to world space C-frame.new, and then my parameters that I put in were 0, -6, and then -100 over 15 times I. Not really sure why I did it in this fraction. I probably could have simplified that, but I'm just not going to worry about it. So these variables I just kind of toggled with. So, you know, if you want to set it to your own position, I just play with it. Eventually you'll find a position that looks good. It's really not that complicated. And then the fire noise is going to play. So I put the fire part in the world space, or the workspace, and then the fire noise will play, just to add a little bit of touch realism. And then we'll have a function that says touched connect function and then part. So we're gonna run I guess I didn't really say this out loud, but we're gonna have a event that runs when the fire part is touched. So run when fire part is touched, just so that we can set some damage going. So we'll say local target player is equal to game dot players get player from character part dot parent. So this is going to check for the part, see if it's a player, and if target player exists, then we'll check if target player is not equal to player being yourself, the caster. So you can't damage yourself with the ability. Then we will say target player dot character dot humanoid take damage. I don't know, we'll just say like 10. So I have a different function here. I actually have an event that runs that will just say like give the player a shield for 3 seconds and then have them take damage. Or yeah, that's sort of like there's some invincibility frames going on. So this isn't really mitigated to stop from just damaging someone like 50 times if they touch it. So I think just to mitigate that, I'll maybe lower this damage to like 0.5. But you can definitely adjust that. And actually, just for good practice, I'll relevant variables. So we'll say local napalm damage, and I'll set this as a constant actually. Napalm damage is equal to 0.5, and then I'll put that in here. So napalm damage. So now when someone touches the fire part, they'll take damage. And then I'll wait 0.1 seconds between. So I believe if all works, so I press E and then I run napalm, and then the napalm just runs the server event. And then that will call this method, which should take in player as a variable. Yeah, okay, let's give that a try. Seems we have an issue already. Okay. Primary part is not valid member of, yes, player dot character dot primary part. I need to reference my actual character. Run that, then I got this, and I have some sound permissions, but let's grant that permission. I can't really hear it, but I'll figure that out in a second. So yeah, I mean that's a good start. So I got the napalm running, and it does damage, and I can even set it up so that it can do damage to non-player characters. So we'll say if the player doesn't exist, then we'll just have we'll check to see if there's a humanoid. So local human is equal to part.parent, find first child humanoid. If human, then, and then we'll just have human take damage, napalm damage. Okay, so now we just have a little extra statement that says if it's not a player, then we'll check if the part still is like, you know, descendant of a bigger model with a humanoid, then we can still have the humanoid take damage. So if I put in a block rig, so I can do damage to him because these things have humanoids. And I point my ability at him. Then it doesn't work because I think it's because he's anchored. Okay, I'm back. I figured out the issues. So the first issue is with the sound. I noticed that I was setting volume to true when I meant to set loop to true, so it's just a syntax error. The second one was when I was placing the fire part in the world space, I set it too low, and that is because this is more catered towards when I'm using the actual boss model and not just a normal player model. So -2 is a bit of a better spot. But I'm going to set a note here that says change later when in boss model. So just to remember, so if I play the game, then I can hear the noise, and then the dummy also takes a little bit of damage, which is really good. Let me just remove this print statement. Remove this print statement. That was just some testing. So now we've got it set up so that when I join the game and I press the button E, then I can shoot napalm. Well, we have a couple of issues. First is that I can spam it in any direction that I want, and as cool as that is, it's just not balanced and practical. And also, it doesn't change my mana value. So I have the mana, needs to get lower. So what we're going to do is we're going to first set the player's mana value just to mitigate that a little bit. So what we want to, when we run the napalm function, let's just say before the loop, we're going to set player mana to be, or like, what's a better way? Subtract 30 mana from player. So we'll just say local mana is equal to player dot or find first child mana. If mana exists, if the mana exists, then we'll just say mana dot value minus equals 30. That being the napalm mana, but maybe we can store that as a variable as well. Napalm mana is equal to 30. So now when I run this, I should. So I can only do this 3 times and then it doesn't work anymore. So that is great. So the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to focus on a couple of basic things. So not only do I want to run the server event, but I'm also going to want to set my walk speed to 0. So the reason why is that, well, first let me just do this. So I'll just say local players equal to game.players.localPlayer. So I want it to be so that you're a little bit vulnerable when you're casting this ability. So we'll say player.character.humanoid.walkspeed is equal to 0. And this works just fine on the client side, because you're not going to be able to move your character. And we'll just say that he's unable to move for 1 second, because that's what I have it set up in my game. And then his walk speed will go back to 16, which is the normal amount. So once I enter the game, I will create this, and I'll fire it, and yeah, that happens. So I can't move for 1 second, and then I can. Cool. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to create a bit of a like a warning. So there was like when you fire the napalm, what you want to do is you want to set like a red warning area so that you know to get out of the way before it shoots at you. You know, if you want the game to be reasonably easier, because if you don't have these warnings, it'll probably be basically undodgeable. So we'll run a function. I'm going to put it above napalm, and it's just going to be napalm warning. And I'll take in the parameter player and the position. And I also want to change this up a little bit. I'm going to actually have this create the position as well. I'm running into a bit of an issue where it resets the position, potentially to not where I want it to be. So I'm going to define the... I messed something up. Probably because I have to open this or close that. So I'm going to define position in the server call, and I'll just say player.character dot primary part dot cframe, and then this will take in position. So by doing this, I am actually not letting the fire move, because I don't know if you noticed, but it was following my character earlier. Now it doesn't do that, which is good. It's just a uniform straight line, which is exactly what I want. So again, onto the warning. So we're going to create a bit of a warning zone. So we'll say local warning zone is equal to instance.new, and then a part. We'll just define warning zone properties. So I want warning zone to be anchored, and then I want it to have no collisions. And then I'll create an offset value. So that be equal to cframe.new 0, -2, -50. And then warning zone dot size is equal to vector3 dot new 20, 0.5, 10, or 100. So this is just a long rectangle basically. We're going to set its transparency to 1, and then which means it's invisible. And then its material is going to be neon. And you guys can all change these values. This is just what I go with. And you know, for the positions, I would just do whatever works. So I'm going to set its brick color to crimson. So it's a bright red, or a deep red. And then its name will be, just call it napalm warning. So then we're going to put the warning part in the workspace. So warning zone.parent, and then we're going to put it in the same folder as the other napalm, the actual napalm, which will be ability debris. And then the warning zone C-frame is going to be position to world space offset. I'm not really sure why I set that as a parameter, so I'm just gonna maybe do this instead. Go to offset, just put it as a C-frame. So this is just, you know, a good distance from my character. So now what I want to do, and this is like kind of for just cool effects, is I want the warning part to like fade in. So I'm going to say fade warning part in. This is why it starts as invisible, because I actually want it to be visible, but it'll start invisible just for like half a second. It's going to loop 15 times. It's going to use wait, and if you don't know, wait is about 0.03 seconds. And if you multiply that by 15, that's roughly half a second. So warning zone, wait, is that half a second? Let me just 0.03 times 15. Yeah, it's 0.45 seconds. So it's basically half a second, which is equal to warning zone, or no, I could just do warning zone dot transparency minus equals 1/15. So every time it loops for 15 times, it's going to go from 1 all the way down to 0. And then just for good measure, after it's done looping, because computers can calculate math pretty stupidly sometimes, I'll just set it to 0, just to make sure that it's fully visible. And then what's going to happen next is the warning zone. I'll wait 1 second, so it just stays there for seconds. You can see it. And then it will be destroyed. So it'll no longer be part of the game. So I guess a better way of doing this is just debris, add item, warning zone, 1 second. So now what we want is when it calls this, it's going to create the, what do I name this? Napalm warning. So to run napalm warning, and it'll wait for that function to finish, so it'll halt, and then it'll run the actual napalm. So let's see if that worked out alright. Nice. Yeah, it could use a little bit of adjusting on the height, but we have a warning, and then it shoots the fire. Oh, you know what? I actually just remembered why I don't have it set as a debris service, because then I won't halt here. I actually want it to halt while it's waiting to be destroyed. So warning zone, destroy. So I'm gonna go back to this original design. Oh, I have an issue here, and I think it's 2.4, might be a little bit better, just a little bit lower, or it might be 2.6 actually. So halt, and then it'll fire the napalm. Let's try 2.6. Pretty sure that's probably better. Oop, not that high. Don't mind the noise. There we go. That's not terrible. That's good enough. You could definitely adjust it more if you wanted to. But here we have our ability. We create the warning, and then it fires the napalm. And my mana goes down, so I can't fire it anymore, and it should do damage. So that is how you create the napalm ability. Thank you guys so much for watching. Also, if you guys want to support me and what I do, make sure to check out my game Boss Fighters. I'll link that in the description, and also join my Discord. Bye.